Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our last webinar of 2021. While we generally couple a sponsor with one of our industry-leading consultants for this series, we do on occasion change things up a bit. Today is one of those times as we have a new sponsor to introduce to you. Before I do so, let's go over some of the logistics and ground rules. We are indeed recording this session, and we will send you an email after this webinar with a copy of the slides and a link to the MSP-Ignite YouTube channel, where you'll be able to watch the presentation again and share it with others. You will all remain muted during the presentation. However, please use the Q&A button to ask questions along the way. We will indeed stop for questions and have some time at the end as well. So go ahead and share them as you have the questions. Our keynote speaker today is Ryan Smith. With over 10 years building SaaS software product organizations, Ryan is the Vice President and Product Evangelist for Armor and is responsible for helping bring to market a security platform that helps MSPs deliver security to their customers wherever they are located. In his current role, Ryan is responsible for the product vision and strategy, working with strategic partners, product culture at Armor. In previous roles, he served as the VP of Product and Director of Product Marketing for Armor, as well as Product Director for numerous SaaS startups in the cybersecurity, e-commerce, and systems integration spaces. Ryan holds a PhD in mass media and communication studies from European Graduate School. Good afternoon, Ryan.
Hey, good afternoon, Steve. And thank you and MSP-Ignite for having us today as a speaker. We're really looking forward to sharing more about this topic and telling you a little more about Armor.
We look forward to it.
Perfect. So, the topic we want to really discuss today is how, we can tackle vendor sprawl. And this is a topic that all MSPs are innately familiar with. We have technology vendors who not only approach us daily to use their services, but we use a number of technology vendors to provide services to our customers. And it becomes overwhelming at times. So we're going to use a little bit of analogy of football today and talk about, red zone defense with security and how we can use vendors strategically and talk about this topic of vendor sprawl more strategically, in terms of this analogy. So let's dive into that content then. So on the agenda today, we have a couple of items. First is we're going to talk about what is vendor sprawl, what does it mean in the context of the cybersecurity landscape. Then we'll talk about what MSPs can do about this. How can we devise robust security programs that help us keep the threat actors out of our end zone? To use the football analogy a little further, and what can Armor offer in that space? And then, as Steve said, we'll certainly take questions throughout this webinar. So if you have questions, please shoot them live, and we'll answer them live time. Otherwise, we'll have some time at the end for a Q&A to wrap all of this up. So what is this topic of vendor sprawl? How does it impact the cybersecurity landscape? And what does this mean for managed service providers? Well, vendor sprawl is exactly what it sounds like. It's the accumulation of multiple point security solutions from different vendors over a period of time. And this accumulation occurs partly due to the way the security industry situated itself and sold band-aids to different problems that we've had over the years. But it's also, because the use cases of our customers are exploding as digital transformation accelerates a pace of innovation that is hard to keep up with. So you kind of have two problems that, lead to us having a lot of vendors in our stack and the sprawl occurring that we need to think about and talk about. So like I said, the first one is, the way in which the security industry itself has approached solving problems for managed service providers in the past. As new types of attacks come out, new threat vectors, new attacks of the year, new types of security solutions are needed to not only protect against those attacks, but provide the adequate telemetry back into the SOCs of the world to do threat detection and response. And so you'll need EDR tools to protect laptops and desktops. You'll need CSPM and CASB tools to protect your usage of the cloud, identity and access management to protect against user and human error. And you can quickly see that I've only named 3 use cases and categories, but those are 3 different technology sets that MSPs have had to accumulate just to solve different point problems with security that have come up over even just the last few years. And then you couple that with the fact that there's an average of 45 cybersecurity tools deployed in enterprise networks that we've accumulated over the years. That is a lot to not only look after from a threat detection and response perspective, but also manage just operationally for a managed service provider, because these tools take management, right? Just like any piece of software, it's not just you install it that magically works. If that was the case, then we would all have security software installed and there'd be no breaches that ever occurred. But that's not the case. The tools, the alarms can be in place that tell us something's going on, but unless we know how to adequately respond to those alarms, then we're going to have a hard time delivering an effective security program, both internally and also for our customer base as well. So what caused this? We've talked about it a little bit, but piecemeal approaches to when breaches become rapidly prevalent. So, hey, breach of the day, we're going to sell you software band-aid of the day. The sophistication and types are varying. So you do actually need this protection and telemetry in place for different use cases. But then you have this digital transformation that's occurring throughout the industry. And if you think about it, when we had to worry about security previously, it was a little simpler. We had what was within our walled garden of our organization. A lot of the stuff was on-prem, or we had direct access to servers. So what we could do to protect that walled garden and respond, was possibly a little simpler, more effective. But over the years, with the introduction of the public cloud, you've seen a lot of the pace of digital transformation speed up. So now you have different environments to protect. You have what's on-prem, what's maybe co-located in a private cloud environment somewhere, what's in a public cloud environment, how many public clouds are we using, because they each have different use cases that they're particularly effective at delivering. And from an IT security perspective, that's daunting, right? To have all of those different environments that we have to have visibility and monitoring in for protection capabilities. But then within each of those environments, you have application deployment types changing. You have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. So there's different levels of even shared responsibility of what we have access to, what we're capable of protecting. And that in itself leads to a proliferation of vendors and sprawl and the pieces we need in place to effectively run a program. And this has a real impact to managed service providers. There's massive inefficiency and operational costs for the MSPs. There's staffing costs, and we all know that staffing is one of the hardest problems facing any business today. Is how do we get not only talent in place, but the right talent in control as well. So, that is something that we're noticing, at least in the industry, is not only is this vendor sprawl happening for all of those reasons, but it's getting harder to operationalize effective security programs because of the operational costs that come with the management of all this vendor sprawl, the staffing that you need in place and the training that comes with it, and then the ability to even sell effectively security as part of a portfolio as well. And this is very well representative by the Momentum cyber landscape that comes out every quarter. There's over 3,500 cybersecurity vendors in the US alone. Lots of money is being invested in the industry globally. And this ecosystem can be chaotic, confusing, and lead to a lot of lack of confidence in managed service providers as they're thinking about how, where do I even start? How do I get my, mom and pop business who's paying me a smaller amount of recurring revenue to invest properly in securing their business, because these attacks are happening downstream. The threat actors are getting savvier, and it's getting easier to launch attacks against anybody. So how do we have that security conversation across the market landscape in a way that's effective? And then where do we start as managed service providers in building out a security program when this is the landscape in front of us? What do we need? Do we need network tools? Do we need endpoint tools? Do we need to invest in SOC as a service and MDR capabilities? What does the compliance conversation bring to the table as part of all of this? As you can see, it quickly adds up into a very large operational conversation when it comes to what does it even mean to stand up a security portfolio as an MSP? What should be included in it? And what does that service offering look like to our customers? Because we have to nail this service offering to our customers, because all MSP relationships with their customer base are built on years of trust, years of the MSP working on their behalf to not only keep their infrastructure up and running so their business stays up and running, but there's always been this implicit condition that you're going to keep it safe as well. And if we don't adequately design our security portfolio to deliver an offering that's going to keep our customers safe, protected, that's going to keep them compliant, then that trust is going to be broken, and that's going to be another way in which that customer can be put out of business. So this security conversation, I think everybody's feeling it become more relevant to their everyday lives, and it will continue to be so, as long as we have this picture. So we've painted a pretty daunting picture of what's out there, what we're seeing in the market, but let's talk about, is all hope lost? What can a managed service provider do in these arenas to, game plan effectively? And this is where we'll really use the football analogy to blow it out a little bit. But you have to have a strategy. And for me, that means having a player coach on the field at all times that understands the different pieces that you have in place, because you're going to need strategic considerations of what you're offering in market, what that's going to look like. You're going to need tools that you need to lay down and put in place, and you're going to need to operationalize that to some extent. So when we think about this player coach that's on the field for our MSP, here are some of the things that player coach can do as they're building out a strategy for tackling this vendor sprawl that we're seeing in the market. Is first, you got to do an assessment of where you are today. What do you have in your portfolio? Do you already have a security offering? What does it look like? What use cases does it solve for your customers? Are there new use cases or gaps or specific requests from clients that are coming out that would cause you to change these things or access these things? How are we going to audit your tool stack as well? What security tools are you already using? What are their contract life cycles? What features do you get for them, or environment life cycles do they come in place? Is your team proficient at using them? Do you feel like you've been effective at operationalizing security tools in the past, or do you feel like it is a drag on your team where they can be doing different activities that are better suited for your business? One of the things that we've noticed a lot is, when people are managed service providers are tackling this question of how do I offer a security portfolio? What does that look like? They'll initially try and build it themselves, because they're all incredibly smart individuals who have built service and businesses over the years. And they think it's another tool, another capability, and they can bring it into their life cycle. Well, what they quickly realize is that a DevOps engineer that they've been using to manage somebody's infrastructure. As soon as they have to write a SIM rule and then a playbook in a different technology, and then write connections between that SIM and that automated response, as well as focus on the deployments of EDR, a WAF, et cetera, it gets overwhelming, right? Nobody is a subject matter expert or a domain expert in all of those things. And so, what we're seeing is this question of, what do I have today? What is my team proficient at? What is within our control today? What is outside of it? Where are the gaps? Ultimately, it's just a question of alignment with what you want to be as a business, where you want to go, and where does cybersecurity fit into that picture, for businesses. So some MSPs look, hey, I just want a little add-on to my existing infrastructure that I sell to my clients. And I just need to add a little bit of recurring revenue to my existing install base. And then also use security as lead gen for my customers. Others decide we do want to actually build out that second S and be a managed security provider, and not just a managed service provider, but a managed security services provider. But a lot of people realize, hey, there's a huge market opportunity for security. All my customers are asking for it every day in the news. I can see where security and compliance are being more important. But after this assessment and using steps 1 and 2 in defining my strategy, I'm honest with myself that I cannot operationalize security in a way that is high margin, not just a people game for me, and a burden on my existing resources. And it would actually be more effective if I could align my current business with it, which is what we do best, just offering managed services, and then go partner with a detection and response firm or a MSSP that does this, as their domain expertise for a living. So that is a trend we're seeing in the market as this assessment occurs, of different levels of jumping into the security ballgame, if you will. But you also have to analyze your ROI. So what are you investing in all of those tools, the management of them, the contract uptake and upkeep of those things? But you can also use industry tools as well, whether it's Forrester total economic impact assessment reports, to help you evaluate vendors, their offerings, different security providers. So you have a strategy that effectively aligns with your business goals. I think the best football teams out there are the ones that are systems. Yes, they have great players, they have great pieces in place that can be equated to the technology, but they're the ones that have a culture, a system that can be believed in. Whether it's great defensive teams, like just take Alabama's reign in college football over the last years. There's obviously been that buy-in to a particular system, and I think that system is your strategy and how that corporate strategy aligns with your cybersecurity strategy. Our second tip here is, as you're evaluating different vendors, different security services offerings, we have to recognize this complexity and explosion of environment types, use cases that we need to solve for our customers across identity, ransomware, different network-based attacks, Log4j, which we just saw, this week set the world on fire a little bit in terms of application development. And we have to ask, what are vendors or security services doing to unify your security across all of these different environments and use cases? Because security, can rarely be siloed due to a lot of the issues we saw in the past, right? Like, we don't have enough people. We can't hire people with the right domain expertise fast enough to scale to some of these challenges. by doing it that way, we end up with 75 tools that we just don't have the operational capacity to manage. So we really have to be looking towards unification, consolidation. And I think you've seen that in the industry over the past few years, as you have the Palos of the world who have bought up a number of different security vendors and are combining them into XDR platforms, for example. And so I think this is something that you'll continue to see as a trend, and that managed service providers need to be asking of their security vendors is, what other things are you going to do for me from a value delivery perspective of keeping my customers safe? Because I can't just keep paying you for this little piece. And then make sure that it doesn't just fill a gap now, but it aligns to that future strategy and anywhere you're going in the future. So good examples here that we're seeing in the managed service space all are related to cloud adoption and what that means for their customers. A lot of security providers, like I said, were born out of kind of on-prem, single tenant, enterprise use cases. But as threat vectors and threat actors move downstream in the market, more and more people are going to be susceptible to ransomware and things like that. So, what is that vendor doing for you to address requirements you have in the future? So if you knew all of your customer base is moving into the cloud, and right now it's just using Office 365 because they moved their email and AD servers, up into the cloud, but they're going to start putting workloads into the cloud over the next few years. Make sure the security tools can do, the right detection and response, alert to the right telemetry in those environments. And because that will hamstring you in the future if you have to go flip another security provider in 2 years because your customer base's use case requirements have changed. So make sure, the question here is how future-proof is that partnership with any security provider that you might have? What does implementation look like? Who's responsible for it? How long does it take? As we said, digital innovation transformation moves at light speed these days. So if it takes 6 months or a year to fully roll out a SIEM, that doesn't do me much in terms of getting time to market for my security offering. And that's what it means for you as a managed service provider, right? Is time to market to capture that piece of revenue out there from the growing security services space. And what's the division of responsibilities between you as the managed service provider and the vendor themselves? Is the vendor just responsible for software upkeep and all? Do they offer any type of professional services offering, whether it's installation, whether it's helping you, configure that, whether it's any support agreement, or maybe it's professional services in talking to your customers? This is something incredibly important in the security space. Is you will get alerts on the holidays at 2 a.m. in the morning. Who is talking to your customers? Who's hopping on the box to remediate said issue? These are incredibly important conversations when it comes to security portfolios that you need to be having with your vendor partners. And then, what specific aspects of security operations is the vendor handling, or are they not handling any aspect of the operational part of security, and are they just a tool that you have in your toolkit, if you will? And then will your staff have access to the vendor's security and compliance staff? This comes down to that question of where does our responsibility lie? What expertise do we have on staff? If I am not able to answer a question about PCI requirement 3.2, can I ask the vendor's GRC team, and will they jump on a call with my customer? And this is where we'll see some differentiation in the market come across of providing those experts as part of the solution, as part of the service offering, because you need those experts, right? You cannot do this in a cookie cutter way, because security is not cookie cutter. Security is complex. It does require expertise to some extent, and we need to leverage that talent effectively if we're going to all help each other succeed in this market these days. And then integration. This comes to this unification story a little bit. Is, am I getting visibility across all of the environments that I manage today? But it also comes with the flexibility to not necessarily, tackle this vendor sprawl problem head on. We're not saying all vendors are bad and you need one vendor to rule them all. I think that's a fantasy, and B, not the best approach. But that vendor needs to help you consolidate, help you with TCO and total cost optimization, help you with margin where they can by unifying what they can. But they also need to be extensible into what you have that works for your business today. So if you love your EDR provider, you're getting a lot out of it, your team has the operational management of that technology down, there would be no reason to replace that. So how extensible is this partner of yours into what you have in your ecosystem today? Because I think that will, play an important part in your strategy decisions, your financial decisions, but where your strengths and weaknesses lie as a team here. But I don't think you can solely rely on tech, especially with security. I think you'll always need people. There will always be a human element of security, no matter how good machine learning, AI, et cetera gets. Is we may get faster at detecting things and responding to things with automated playbooks, but you're still going to need ways to deploy and configure effectively within an environment, because security is always going to run into the where the application rubber meets the road, if you will, of what the customer's application looks like, what environment it's in, how it's deployed. And so you need to really think about what that deployment experience is for your customers, because deployment issues can ruin a customer's trust, especially when you're signing new logos and with new prospects that you have. If they come into the business and it takes 2 weeks, a month to deploy, when they're used to installing an app from an app store on their phone and configuring it themselves, then that's going to be, harmful to that trust relationship you've built. So you need security deployments that not only take into account the snowflake requirements of a customer environment, but that can be done, in concert with your CI/CD chains, the ways in which you're managing that infrastructure for a customer today, that is in tune with the way in which software is deployed within that environment. And then guided remediation is the other area in which humans are slightly always needed, right? Is that we can automate access to systems and say, hey, if you see this type of ransomware activity, black hole this machine. But there's always the risk of false positives. There's always customers who are going to be adamant that you never touch a specific system, or you always do it within a change window, even if they're being cyber attacked, which sounds weird, but we've had these conversations. Is you need a vendor who can not only help you with those customer conversations, but guide you in actually remediating the issue. It doesn't do you any good if a security partner just alerts you, hey, you got a bunch of fires in the house, and then by the time the house is burned down, then your team has had a chance to remediate it. You actually need that guided remediation and a combination of automated playbook tech to help you truly build a defense in depth posture within your environment. And that takes experts, right, that have the years of experience, the certifications, the knowledge to look at the data that they're seeing. I consider myself fairly technical, but I log into, our data lake. I see some of the alerts coming across our SIEM. And while I can kind of see what's going on, it would take me hours to write a threat report of what threat intelligence actors I'm seeing in the environment, what tactics, techniques, and procedures they're using, what types of alerts from these different tools can be correlated in such a way that tells us this isn't just scanning activity, but active breach or activity going on. And that takes a SOC. I don't think you can deliver a holistic security program without having security operations people, eyes on glass, 24/7, 365, that knows what they're looking at and can break that down for customers, in a communicable way. That is coupled with threat research. The reason why those engineers and analysts are so good at their job is because they have threat hunters looking for threat actors, new threat techniques, and this is important to where technology fails us. Is some technologies getting better at detecting what we call non-signature based attacks, things that we don't have a blueprint for, if you will, of how the threat actors are operating with an environment, a malware signature, for example, of a piece of malicious software we've seen in the wild before. But what are the behaviors of these threat actors? So even if they haven't dropped a piece of malicious software, how are they operating at the process level of these systems that allows us to identify, normal good behavior versus abnormal bad behavior, threat actor behavior. And so, technology will always be a step behind in the asymmetrical race of what we know and what we know we don't know. And so it's important to have those threat research teams who are providing that element of what we actually input into the technology to get us the alarm bells ringing in the first place. And here's an important part of the conversation with managed service providers that often gets overlooked, but to every MSP we've talked to is actually the easiest way they are able to have a security conversation with their customers, which is we need compliance experts who can come in and not only bolster credibility to the framework we've chosen, the security assessments we're doing, but compliance is going to be the thing that gets this customer interested in buying security. Ransomware is always a little amorphous. There's always going to be that question of, I'm not important enough, it'll never happen to me. It'll be, oh, I think our existing systems are fine, or we're doing enough for these things, or we have, some AV tool deployed and we think that's sufficient. Whatever the use case may be that the customer is using to say, hey, we don't need to buy security. If they fail their audit, and let's say PCI as an example, and they are a retail store that can't process credit card payments anymore, that is a very real threat to their business that all CEOs, CFOs, the people that normally are the or the sticking point in a conversation, to the table in terms of, okay, well, these are very clear guidelines and are very prescriptive as to what I must do and not do. So you need a security partner that is also a compliance partner, because not only will it help you sell more security with that vendor, but it's also going to provide you that extra layer of credibility and attestation to have that initial conversation with your existing customer base. And then support for your growing business. This goes on a little bit to what I was just saying with the compliance expert and how that can be used in a sales conversation. But too often we see a vendor drop in, here's our software, we got you to sign a 2-3 year deal. Great. Well, we'll see you in 3 years at renewal, or, and that's not a great feeling for anybody. Yes, it may solve your need at that time, but it doesn't really necessarily help you grow your business or, increase your relationship with your customer base in any meaningful way. And so we really do think it's important, as you're looking through all of this tremendous vendor sprawl, to look for a partner that can give you not only all the technical support you seek to solve your issue of the day and issues into the future, but also to grow your business with you. So we think that this can be marketing and sales support. It could be operational support. It could be jumping on the phone with your customer during incidents. Whatever it is that makes you feel like you have a true security partner at your side, rather than you're just deploying some software within your environment. And that kind of leads us into, what Armor can offer and where we see security solutions and services shaking out in the market today in regards to these things. Is we think that, as we've talked about already, from an outcome perspective, it's all about security protection and compliance outcomes for your customers. These are the things they care about. Am I going to pass my audit? Am I going to be in the news because I got breached? Right? Those are, when it boils down to it, they don't care about the technology type. They don't care about how the detection occurs, who's responding. They just want to make sure bad guys not in network and stealing my data, right? So, these are ultimately what you need to be concerned about when you're thinking about security for your customer base. And then you need to think about the risks that comes with offering those things, or where is risk introduced? Well, there's always the intentional risk. Threat actors are after me. They want to, ransomware the environment. So, they're going to use some phishing attack to get one of my employees to click on something, and then they'll be in my network, blah, blah, blah. We know the story. That is intentional risk, is somebody maliciously coming after us. There's also intentional insider risk to an environment as well. But then there's accidental risk. And this is the risk that we're seeing most people fall suspect to in attacks today. Is why would a threat actor, have to maliciously try and enter the environment using complex tactics, techniques, and procedures when they can walk through the back door because somebody left the gate unlocked? And that's what's happening with a lot of environments today, is configuration issues, not because some developer is upset at the company and wants to bring it down, but just because they're human. They've deployed and they left a security group open to the public internet. They left a storage bucket open with a customer list in it. These are the ways in which data is being exposed within environments today that are very damaging in the same ways as an intentional attack. But it's a lot easier for the threat actors to get in because the foundations are not in place for checking against human error. And, we think 99% of attacks, especially in public cloud environments, will be of that nature, because there'll be, some configuration in the cloud. So while public clouds are generally safe, how we use them, what we put in them, the configuration of them themselves, that's where all this risk gets introduced. So if we need a solution that solves intentional and accidental risk and ultimately delivers security protection and compliance outcomes to our customer base, what should that solution look like? What visibility should it provide? How should it feel to me? Well, it should provide me visibility wherever I'm at, anywhere, because my customers are anywhere today. While a lot of them may be, still in data centers, their own hosted on-prem environments, that's changing. More adoption of the public clouds occurring. There will be more hybrid environments, and people will get used to how solutions are deployed in those environments. And so not only does my solution or service have to provide me visibility across all of these things, it also has to provide it in a way that's flexible. So does it integrate with the things that I have in my environment today? Does it deploy with my current deployment mechanisms? Can I deploy fast? Can I put security protections in place? Because not only is there a time to market to capture revenue problem, but the threat actors don't wait for you to get security in place before they say game on. Game's on as soon as that environment is connected to the internet. So, how can we get more speed out of our security offerings and implementations? Simplicity. It's got to be simple, easy to understand, easy to get the value out of that we think we're getting, that we're not being breached. How do I know I'm protected? How do I know you're stopping things? It's got to be scalable, because public cloud scalable, it's hyper scalable, in fact. And how are we dealing with kind of these new instances that come up and down all the time, and what does it mean to go from security from one asset to security from 100,000 assets very quickly, and how is that value captured out of that? And so that is Armor's value proposition to a large extent, is we secure and help you make compliant your customers wherever they are. So whether that's endpoints, clouds, containers, networks, Armor is there to be your security and compliance partner, all offered within one security service and solution. So we truly are a detection and response partner that can offer security protection. So i.e. the tools you need to protect different types of environments, public cloud, hybrid, on-prem, etc. So how do we offer endpoint security, IPS, IDS, vulnerability scanning, AV, CSPM, compliance assessments, registry, vulnerability scanning, logging to integrate with your firewalls and cloud native sources that you have today. So how do we offer that holistic, comprehensive solution, but in a way that works for managed service providers, right? So we have to realize that security is not just that technology, but the operational behind it. So how do we help you sell it? How do we help you market it? How do we provide a SOC behind it to actually do the remediation, monitoring, and response within your environment? How do we offer all of this in a way that works with your business? Easy billing, multi-tenant management capabilities, no long-term contracts. So really, how can we shape a security service to work on behalf of the MSP as a partner, and what does it mean to be that detection and response partner for you? So the software we use and the solution that you buy from us is called Armor Anywhere. And the name is everything, though. We are that security and compliance solution and service anywhere you and your customers are. And for us, it is not just technology, right? It's a whole service behind it that not only is your typical security service that you think about, my threat intelligence, threat hunting experts, my SOC itself, and the analysts involved with that, my security engineers who upkeep new rules and playbooks so I can respond to new types of detections events, but support to answer the phone or jump on with the customer at 3 a.m. in the morning. How do I offer, a GRC team to answer those tough compliance conversations? But then how do I help you sell with solutions consultants, managers, marketing teams that not just give you a marketing or a partner portal and say, hey, do your best, but really comes beside you during that strategy, planning, execution phases here. So if you want to learn more about how Armor all does that, then we do encourage you to request a demo. Email msp@armor.com, and note the Channel Pro December webinar. We usually enter really great giveaways for people that use that email address, and also reference our data sheets that are available here as well. But just to wrap up in conclusion, before I turn it back to Steve and we get to any questions that we might have, I'll bring it full circle. So when we're trying to think of a football team, and we'll say the threat actors are the offense, and they're in the red zone, so they're close to your crown jewels and threatening to score. What is the best way to develop a red zone defense so you can be effective at protecting your crown jewels, which is your customer base and the relationships of trust that you've built with them throughout that period? Well, first have that strategy, have that player coach that can align all the different pieces you have in the field into a cohesive program. A lot of times that's a partner like Armor who has expertise to be that detection and response coach who can help build out that security portfolio in a way that addresses all of the different use cases that offense might throw at it. And that's going to be the Pepsi challenge, right, of your service providers and solutions is what can they actually detect and respond against tactics, techniques, procedures wise of these threat actors, because that's the way in which your customers are going to be breached. So once you have that player coach who can help you execute that strategy, then it's about aligning the defense in the right way, right? Are you going to play zone? Are you going to blitz? What do the people need to be doing at any one time based at what they're seeing live time from the threat actors and the offense? So if they see the offense lining up and it looks like, there's some vulnerability in the offensive line, then cool, you might want to snipe the threat actor. But, that's really rare that you're going to be able to get that sack, and flip the tables, if you will, or an interception. So, what you're generally going to have to rely on is that secondary. So once your offensive line, the tools have alerted you to the threat, what's coming, what does it look like, then your secondary is responding. So you're laying down different technologies to do different types of detection and response. You're putting the right people in place to make the tackle before they get to the end zone and protect those points, right? So I think it's all about not only having defense in depth, having the right places at the right parts of the network, having the right visibility in all the different pieces of environments that you're protecting against. But then it's about having the people behind that to respond to things effectively, and ultimately bringing it all together in a way that not only is strategically aligned to the goals of your business, growing revenue, protecting your customer base, expanding margin, whatever those goals of the business are, but then can actually execute that and doesn't just be another piece of software of these 45 pieces of software that we all have that sits on our shelf. So when we look at this big, threat landscape and all of the different vendor tools that have come along with that threat landscape, and we see a daunting task about us, just remember that there are partners like Armor here that can be your holistic security partner into the future that can evolve with you as all of the landscapes change with the rate of innovation that we're seeing today. So once again, I really appreciate you all having me today. And Steve, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take a Q&A period now. Otherwise, we can wrap just a few minutes early for everybody.
Thanks, Ryan. Fantastic. So I'm curious because I don't know the answer either. Someone posted one similar. Are you managing the third-party tools so we don't need 45 of them and only need 5? Or does Armor have its own suite of tools that make it so that you don't need to look at any of the 3,500 options out there?
So that's a great question. And the answer is both, right? So if you already have tools within your environment that you like, you're happy with, the price point's good, whatever the reason may be, then we won't necessarily manage the tool itself. So we won't come in and manage your firewall for you, but we will take the data that's coming off that firewall that tells us important things about threat actor, activity. So what IPs are we seeing? What is that firewall blocking? What is it not blocking? Things like that. So we'll take the security data and we'll respond to it with our team. So you can send different telemetry types into our environment, and then our SOC will provide the security services on top of those different data types. However, if you're like, you know what, managing just one tool, one suite of tools delivered by Armor sounds way better, than the 3,500. I don't want to look at that landscape. Then we obviously have a set of tools that we recommend putting in place based on the environment we're protecting. And we will help you have that conversation of what does that package look like that you can offer your customers that's the full turnkey tools, service, everything in a box where you don't have to worry about anything.
So if for some reason I just crawled out from under a rock and realized, oh my God, we've got to start providing cybersecurity solutions to our customers and we have nothing, it would be great to call you guys first.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. And then if you're already providing them today and having trouble scaling them, you're having trouble finding the right people to manage those security offerings. You don't feel like you have the right tools in place because your customers are asking you about gaps that you might have. Those are good conversations as well, right? Not just the newbies to cybersecurity, but people that have been doing it that need assistance, along the way. And it's not just security assistance, feature gaps, things like that, but we truly do mean it when we want to be a partner in the sales and marketing. How do we campaign? How do we help you have security conversations with your customers? How is that aligning to your goals, whether it be better margin, revenue growth, new customer acquisition, et cetera? We want to be aligned to all of that strategically with you as well, because we think that helps, you institute better outcomes for your customers.
One of the things I counsel our members on all the time is, we all talk about shiny object syndrome, right? We go to a conference, salesperson for one of the vendors helps us identify that we have a gap in our coverage that we never knew existed. And lo and behold, they have the perfect solution to fill that gap and save the day for us. And I always say to people, if you didn't know about the hole in your offering before you went to a conference, don't buy anything. Like, take the time to educate yourself a little bit. Do you help with that to identify, here are the areas of coverage that we recommend, and here's what the tools you have in place are covering?
Oh, certainly. So we always look at it, and our framework of choice is the MITRE framework, which just outlines all of the active tactics, techniques, and procedures that a threat actor might use at the different stages of cyber activity. So whether it's investigation or infiltration of environment, compromise of that environment, things like that. There's going to be different things they're going to do based on what environment you're in. So if you're into the public cloud and it is the scanning and reconnaissance phases of threat activity, then there's going to be certain tools that are good at detecting that tactic, technique, and procedure at that stage for that environment. And we'll have an honest conversation about that with your stack that you have in place and anything we can offer too, right? Like I said, I don't think there's any security provider that will have 100% coverage of everything, because it would be the most massive Franken software that you've ever seen in the world. But that's why we think you need the security service behind it. And you need that detection and response team that's going to tell you what you need to detect threats based on what you have, what's in your environment. But more importantly, what are the threat actors actually doing in the wild today to exploit those things that you have?
So if I follow all of this correctly, Armor is not just a provider of cybersecurity solutions, but a coach and support to the MSP community in that realm.
Certainly, yeah. We think that's one of our main differentiators, actually, across other both technology solutions and service providers in the spaces. Not only is our solution purpose-built for MSPs, it's multi-tenant, no month-to-month contracts, easy billing, all of that stuff that MSPs check the box with and like. But we know that security is a whole slice of a pie, new slice of a pie that we're all trying to capture. And there's tons of revenue to go around, but it's a whole new business segment that we're trying to build and together. And that doesn't just take technology. It takes people that help you understand how to position that, how to campaign to existing and new customer bases, how to sell that technology, how to support it effectively once it's in place. And so we do think it's that entire journey that anybody should be helping you with. But we certainly take that approach with our customers today.
There, one last question. Is there a list of tools or platforms that you currently work with and can connect with and get logs from?
Yeah.
Is it possible that I might be using something you don't work with and therefore you can't help me with?
Oh, certainly. So if you go to our website, the full extensibility of the platform, all of its integrations is outlined there. And yes, there's always use cases where we don't necessarily support something, but that's not the end of the conversation, or we hope it's not, right? We can always onboard that tool and look at what outcomes you want to get out of that from and deliver to your customers. And if our SOC thinks that is a great technology set to help you detect and respond to threats in your customer environment, then we'll build out that integration as part of onboarding you and helping you with your realization journey with the company.
Fantastic. Well, Ryan, thank you for your time today. Thank everybody else for attending. Hopefully you received some information today that's actionable and helpful and makes you want to reach out to Armor. For those of you on the call that are not already participating in one of our peer groups, end of the year planning is a perfect time to get started. So reach out to us. Let's talk about getting you into a peer group. Ryan, thanks again for your time and expertise. Take care, everybody, and have a great holiday.